2028. Final deal negotiations are expected by early 2026. US President Donald Trump again distanced himself from Jeffrey Epstein after newly released emails mentioned him. Trump said he knew nothing about Epstein, calling the claims a Democratic distraction and urging a probe into Epstein's ties with Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, and others instead. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says no Russian strike will go unpunished after deadly attacks on Kyiv and southern Ukraine. He praised long-range Neptune missiles and urged more air defense support from partners as civilian casualties continue to rise. 9 people were killed and 29 injured after a massive accidental blast at Naugam police station in Srinagar, India. The explosion occurred while forensic teams handled seized explosives linked to a terror module, leaving widespread damage and shockwaves felt kilometers away. The UN Security Council demands an end to Houthi rebel attacks in Yemen and strengthens monitoring of the arms embargo. Sanctions on Houthi leaders and the group are extended for a year to promote peace and regional security. Now we start with Trump and BBC. US President Donald Trump says that he would likely sue the BBC next week for as much as $5 billion after the British broadcaster admitted it wrongly edited a video of the speech he gave but insisted there was no legal basis for his claims. Trump's lawyers had initially set a Friday deadline for the BBC to retract its documentary or face a lawsuit for no less than $1 billion. They've also demanded an apology and compensation for what they called overwhelming reputational and financial harm. Trump has now said that he will sue the BBC for anywhere between $1 and $5 billion. Let's listen in.
We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready to take?
Well, I think I have to do it. I mean, they've even admitted that they cheated.
The BBC has admitted editing of Trump's remarks was an error of judgment and has sent a personal apology to Trump earlier this week. The broadcaster has stated that it would not rebroadcast the documentary, but has rejected the defamation claim. Meanwhile, Trump has also stated that he has not spoken with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer yet on this issue, but that he planned to call him this weekend. He has added Starmer had tried to reach him and was very embarrassed by the incident. Let's listen in.
I have not, but I'll call him. I'm going to call him over the weekend. He actually put a call into me. He's very embarrassed by it. You know, I don't know what percentage is owned by the country, but regardless if it's small or large or nothing, I can say this, the UK is very, very embarrassed by BBC, what they did.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Shruti, now looking at this, how does this multi-billion-dollar lawsuit by sitting U.S. president against a major foreign broadcaster affect the current U.S.-UK political and media relations? Do you think it has any effect, this personal connection or personal attack, not personal attack, but is taken as personal attack by BBC on Trump, could affect their ties?
Well, the probability of suit does kind of put a strain on the UK-USA relationship. But as of now, we've not seen the immediate knee-jerk reaction like we saw with Canada. I think that shows that Trump has learned his lesson, that if he kicks his allies left, right, and center for whatever assumed defamation that he feels or any slight of insult that he feels is coming his way, then it would end up USA very alone in their sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere. So it shows that he is perturbed because he's talking about a lawsuit, but not enough because it's not going to be repeated. They have publicly admitted to editing it. There have been two people who have submitted BBC News head as well as their Director General of News. They both quit their jobs on this very same day, although they deny their leaving of their jobs as a direct consequence of being fired for this kind of travesty that has happened with Trump. But they've said it did play its role. So there have already been heads that have rolled for this kind of an action. It does not help UK's case. If Trump does set a lawsuit, he needs to do it. He has many legal problems that are going to come his way because it is a state broadcaster. It's a public service broadcaster. So in a way, he would be fighting the state of UK. So he would be fighting the government of UK in that particular stance. And so it's a good thing that he's hesitating and he's just made big calls about it, but he's not actually gone ahead and done it. This is not like the ABC News where he got his $1 billion settlement from, and this is not the other privatized news channels like the New York Times and the others that he has problems with. This is a state broadcaster, and if he has a problem with the state broadcaster and he takes a lawsuit, then he's actually fighting against the state of UK. That means the Prime Minister and his government, and that would put trade relationships on a pause. That would put a lot of strain on any kind of friendship or camaraderie between the two nations and not just two people. So this is, if he goes ahead with it, it might be a bigger problem than USA actually wants on its hands right now, because since the documentary is not going to be rebroadcasted, redistributed in any way or form, Trump has already lost the groundings that this is going to cause serious damage to it. It was broadcasted once and it has been repealed and the error admitted publicly. So I think he would let these sleeping dogs lie, and he's not going to make much of a fuss because it might end up ruining his friendship with Europe on a whole.
Right, the stakes are indeed very high. And Shruti, I also wanted to ask your take on BBC now. How might this BBC incident be leveraged domestically and also internationally to influence narratives about institutional trust, political bias, and role of public broadcasters? So what do you think how do you think will all this affect BBC's reputation now?
Well, this particular incident, the firings and the admission of editing, has at least put up the very fact that BBC does have a bias. They have said that they don't, but Insight UK found more than 300 incidences of bias, and specifically towards my country, India. So it tends to do this. BBC has a particular narrative that it kind of propels, and as a state broadcaster and as a journalistic entity, that is not acceptable. They tend to look for sensationalization of news bites, whether it's in, let's talk in case of India, they did a documentary in 2023 on PM Modi, where they tried to project him as the butcher of Gujarat, where it was not. And that's a completely wrong, misinformed ideology that they had made that narrative on. They had done this with the Indian national parks, Jim Corbett Park. They tried to victimize the poachers that were actually harming wild animals. So in case of India specifically, and I'm sure the world in general, BBC tends to sensationalize news, hand out victim cards, and try and twist the narrative in a way that is not favorable to the people who are actually ruling the nation. They tend to do a kind of very shoddy job in being an unbiased reporting platform. So this particular incident with Trump being Trump, has made sure that everybody in the world, when the Indians make a hue and cry, they may not look up at it in the same format as when Trump makes a hue and cry and USA goes after it. So this kind of shows that BBC is not a trusted platform. They make very, very specific top-down errors in how they present content to its viewers, and words of BBC alone are no longer cast in stone as unbiased reporting, factual reporting, or even truth-telling. It has a very, very deep impact on the people that actually listen to it, And for people in India, BBC is no longer a faithful or even trustworthy source of news.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing that insight, Shruti. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, US President Donald Trump has once again repeated his stand, saying that he knows nothing about Jeffrey Epstein following the release of emails from the disgraced New York financier mentioning the US president's name. Trump has said that he had a very bad relationship with Epstein and pointed towards the likes of former President Bill Clinton and Harvard University President Larry Summers for being closer to Epstein. Posting on Truth Social, Trump has also stated that this is another ploy by the Democrats and deflect from the government shutdown. He has also said that Attorney General Pam Bondi will be probing the relationship between Epstein and Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, and Reid Hoffman, among other important people. Let's listen into what the U.S. president has said.
What did Jeffrey Epstein mean in his emails when he said you knew about the girls?
I know nothing about that. They would have announced that a long time ago. It's really, what did he mean when he spent all the time with Bill Clinton, with the president of Harvard, who you know, who that is, Summers, Larry Summers, whatever his name is, and all of the other people that he spent time with. Jeffrey Epstein and I had a very bad relationship for many years.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Shruti Dasgupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for staying with us. Shruti, now looking at this, what's your analysis on all this Trump connection with Epstein, and how might President Trump's repeated distancing from Jeffrey Epstein, how do you think it is shaping public perception, even though he keeps denying it? And what is the political responsibility and transparency, or that responsibility on U.S. President Donald Trump about this case now?
That's a very keen observation, questions that you've asked us, Asuma. It's something that we need to understand, that Epstein has become a horse that is being whipped by both sides. Trump whipped this horse to win his election. Epstein was the only thing that he was one of the very major things that he had against the Democrats. And now that he's in power, no, there's nothing happening in Epstein files. Redacted files are only released. And the Democrats are now beating this horse, and they're asking for the full disclosure of the files rather than selected disclosure. And they want Trump's connection to be kind of observed. So basically, Trump is probably either misrepresented the Epstein case and its seriousness to the public, and kind of used the bad blood of this incident to smear the Democrats, or he is completely complicit in it, and he only wants to use Epstein as a pawn to fix Democrats in place and have his bills pass and all the other things. So either of this narrative doesn't work well for the Republicans. If they have promised the nation that they are going to disclose all the Epstein files, why was it not done? And if that is a major concern of MAGA voters, then he should do it. He should deliver on his promises, because not doing so and just denying things does not look good for him. Now, there are rumors again about Epstein's conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Democrats are now saying that that lady is being given specific treatment, special treatments in VIP treatments in her jail cell, and Trump may be considering pardoning her. Trump may be commuting her sentence, and a lot of other things. So the main conspirator somehow dies in his jail cell without actually implicating Trump. Just that email where he says that he's the dog that hasn't barked, that means which either means that he has not spilled the beans, or he has not been publicly defamed. Either of those two narratives don't work well for Trump. And the only thing that Trump actually can do now is, without any bias, release all the files and bury this body. Otherwise, it is going to be a skeleton in his closet that is going to be pulled out every time the Democrats have a bone to pick with Trump and its regime or its policies. So The best way for the authorities to deal with it is full disclosure, full transparency, and accountability. Just by selectively targeting Clinton and the others does not show that you are on the side of justice. It shows that you have a political agenda that you want to push forward, and you're using Epstein very, very carefully and very, very selectively to your particular advantage, which is not the truth that you promised the public who voted you in power.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Shruti Dasgupta for always joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russians will increasingly be unable to ignore the war as Ukraine's long Neptune missiles proved effective in overnight strikes on Russian territory. He has called the attacks justified responses to a Russian missile barrage on Kyiv that has killed 6 people in an apartment block. Hours later, authorities said a Russian drone strike on a market in southern Ukraine has killed 2 more people. This is what the Ukrainian president has said.
З нашими партнерами, щоб наповнити програму Pearl. Програму, яка дозволяє нам купувати американську зброю. Зокрема, це системи протиповітряної оборони, ракети до них. Особливо важливо в цій програмі ракети для патріотів. Ми готуємо угоду із Грецією по енергетиці, щоб максимально розширити варіанти постачання газу в Україну на цю зиму і в стратегічній перспективі. Домовленості з різними країнами Європи, від Норвегії до Греції, щоб у нашої держави були гарантії забезпечення газом. Я дякую всім партнерам, які нам допомагають. І були сьогодні дуже важливі обговорення з нашими військовими, нашої ракетної програми, її рівня. Довгі Нептуни показали себе сьогодні у далекобійних санкціях проти Росії. Ми щомісяця досягаємо більших результатів з ракетами. Я дякую всім виробникам, дуже вдячний за це, нашим воїнам.
Now for this discussion, we welcome retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's a senior geopolitical and strategic defense expert, joined us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Sudhakarji, for joining us again. Good to see you. Sudhakarji, now Major General, looking at this, Ukraine's use of long-range and Neptune military, does it change things in any way does it change the dynamics between these two countries, and what political implication could arise if Ukraine increasingly justifies its cross-border attacks as proportional responses to Russian strikes on civilians?
Good morning, Asoma. Thank you for getting me for your show.
Thank you.
The short answer to your question is yes, it does have a very significant impact. You see, longer the range of weapon systems or the projectiles or the missiles or the drones, larger will be the distance or the depth areas of Russia which are going to be targeted by the kinetic component of Kyiv or Ukraine. Now, if you look back to when the war started, way back in 2022 until now, the conflict has gone through several milestones. Levels of upgradation have taken place based on the distance or the range of a weapon system from say 20 kilometers to 40 to 60 kilometers and 60 to 120, and likewise it has been getting upgraded. Now talking about Neptune, there is no denying the fact what he is claiming, and this unfortunately will lead to escalation of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. At such a time, the criticality is, although is related to the weapon systems and the range, but the criticality is going to be at its worst profile by virtue of the climatic condition, the weather condition. It's almost peak of winter. If these kind of ranged weapons are going to be used by Kyiv, it is not going to give any kind of comfort to Russia. They will not remain silent. They will also retort back. In the recent past, sometime in October, if I respect my memory, Russia also has carried out that nuclear-powered cruise missile, which is called as Burevestnik, traveling almost a distance of 14,000 kilometers and hitting the target. Burevestnik is a nuclear-powered cruise missile, which perhaps became a trigger for Donald Trump to give orders to Pentagon to commence the process of the testing of nuclear weapons. Similarly, it was followed by another weapon system called as Poseidon. Poseidon is nothing but these are underwater drones. It's like a torpedo which seeks out the targets and destroys. Not many countries in the world have got this capability. So it will be only escalating the range, one. Number two, it will also be escalating on the matrix of the hypersonic, and also be mindful of the fact that there is a weapon system called as Orenshik. Orenshik is a hypersonic traveling at a speed of almost about 10 to 11 Mach. 1 Mach is speed of sound, 11 Mach you can multiply. No radar in the world held by any country can detect the flight or carry out neutralization of this weapon system. They have been deployed in Belarus. So it is unfortunately heading towards a militarization and intensification of the weapon platforms, which ultimately will be dangerous and not in favor of Kyiv. Therefore, it would be better that Zelensky, rather than hyping up the issue, takes a very considered view. You see, tit for tat is applicable up to a level, but beyond that, it is proven beyond doubt that the weapon platform capability in the military industry of Russia is far, far ahead, 5 to 8 times more than that of all the Western alliances countries put together. Back to you, Asum.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Major General Sudhakarji for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, viewers, we move on to India. At least 9 people were killed and 31 others injured in a devastating explosion at a police station in Nowgam near Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir on Friday night in India. The explosions occurred after confiscated explosives, including ammonium nitrate stored at the station, detonated. Most of those killed were policemen and forensic team officials who had been examining the materials, which had recently been brought from Faridabad, Haryana. The blast comes just days after another deadly explosion in the capital. A car bomb detonated near the Red Fort in New Delhi, killing 13 people and injuring more than 20 others. Now we welcome back retired Major General Sudhakarji for this discussion as Senior Geopolitical and Strategic Defense Expert. Thank you, Major General, for staying with us. Now, looking at both these blasts, can we say that these 2 recent attacks have shown cracks in Indian state-to-state information sharing? If so, how should India reassess explosive storage protocols and interstate coordination? What do you think?
Okay, the first one is about the cracks in the intelligence surveillance network, and second one is about the interstate coordination. Let me tackle the first one first.
Yes.
Coming to Delhi blast, well, I would say rather than condemning the intelligence network and their capability, I personally feel, since I am a student of geopolitics, joining the dots quite passionately, and I am the one who wrote an article on 31st of May, immediately after Asim Munir was promoted to the honorary rank of Field Marshal, forecasting that a thing like this is in the offing. Pakistan is not going to sit quiet. They are planning for a black swan event. And let me tell you, since I am in touch with major people who are into the int work and all, and I know how they function because I myself used to handle the things while in service.
Yes.
Our intelligence network under NIA is to be complemented.
Yes.
India was heading for a much more disastrous kind of a serial blast in number of cities. A rough count which I have made was actually indicating 18, but yesterday I think in the newspaper said that they were planning for serial blast in 6 cities, comprising of more than 4 states. So therefore, to prevent such a kind of a disaster actually has demanded a very, very exacting kind of a schedule, very tight kind of a schedule by the eight work. They have been proactive. They have moved from lead to another lead and successfully managed to bust the thing much before the serial blast could take place. So Delhi blast, I would compliment, in my opinion, that they have actually busted the gang before they could go in for the final kill. One. Number two, coming to the blast in Srinagar at Nogam, I have served there for a long time and I know what has happened. I also understand the complications of handling explosives. My take on the whole issue is that it is to be treated as an accident. It is not an end failure. While dealing with explosives, it has happened when I was in service. A mishandling of a small little fuse or a detonator or casual handling by somebody. We may be calling it casual. There is nothing like casual when you are handling such kind of things, sensitive issues. They are extra careful. There are occasions wherein they just blow up without any external pressure. It is purely by some kind of a unknown or unscientific cause. It has led in the past to some kind of a explosion which could not be substantiated and explained in the past. It has happened in my presence. I have seen it in my own eyes. And also it has led to many fatalities. So therefore, at the moment, we should rest our assessment purely on the account of accident until new dimensions throw up. Now, coming to the interstate coordination which you are talking of, India, after the National Intelligence Agency came into existence, I think it came into being in 2017 or 18, thereafter, all multiple intelligence agencies have been brought under one umbrella. They continue to operate with a new standing operating procedure. There is a finer coordination about the monitoring, surveillance and accountability, transparency within the system. They don't tell their story to others just to buy, accolades. They continue to work. I have seen these people on ground, how they have been following up one after another, connecting with the dots and trying to prevent major mishaps taking place in the country. That is how India is boasting today that from 2014 till 2025, less for the Delhi blast 2 days back, there has not been any major terrorist attack in the hinterland. It has been possible because of the bringing all the intelligence net.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform.
Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching NewsX Eurozone, and here are the top headlines. Switzerland has won US tariff rate cut to 15% from earlier imposed 39% tariffs. The trade agreement includes Washington slashing its tariffs on imported Swiss products and a pledge by companies to invest $200 billion in the US by the end of 2028. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has strongly condemned Russia's latest wave of large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine, which have claimed 8 lives and caused widespread damage across several regions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that no Russian strike will go unpunished after deadly attacks on Kiev and in areas in southern Ukraine. The major oil terminal in the Russian port city of Novorossiysk has temporarily suspended operations, which is approximately 2% of its global oil supply. This comes after a Ukrainian strike targeted its oil facilities. US Vice President J.D. Vance says that US President Trump recognizes the need to negotiate with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on the ongoing war despite their differences, as a meeting between Trump and Putin in Budapest was cancelled earlier. Dutch computer chip maker Nexperia has stated that they have not halted the shipping of the chips and have alternative supply chains in place. This comes amid the disruption caused by the dispute between Europe-based unit and its packaging plant in China. US President Donald Trump has stated that he would likely sue the BBC next week for as much as $5 billion. This comes as the British broadcaster admitted it wrongly edited a video of a speech delivered by US President Donald Trump. Several people were killed and many were reportedly injured when a bus crashed into a stop in central Stockholm. The Swedish police have ruled out an attack and are investigating the incident as involuntary manslaughter. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. Russian Defense Ministry has stated that its forces have taken control of Yablukov in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region. The ministry has also stated that it has downed 13 Ukrainian drones over several Russian regions, including Rostov, Crimea, which is disputed, and Belgorod. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials have reported that Russia launched a heavy drone and missile attack on Ukraine early on the 14th of November. The attack on energy facilities, apartment buildings, and infrastructure has killed 6 people in Kiev and 2 more in the southern area of the country. Meanwhile, UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric had earlier stated that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly condemns large-scale missile and drone attacks by Russian forces on Ukrainian regions. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief, joining us from Romania. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Yablukove is obviously a village, but it lies very close to certain key logistical footholds and also areas that are crucial part of the supply chains regarding the Ukrainian defense equipment. In that context, many experts are touting this as a strategic gain. What do you make of this current advance by the Russian forces on the front lines?
Well, this current advance, this current offensive is very important to Russia. They want to put a stranglehold on Ukrainian defense to stop the Ukrainian defending their territory. And so they've decided this is the way to move in Zaporizhzhia region, which is very in the southeast of Ukraine on the Dnieper River. It's very important to them, and they have been making an advance in that area. But what's important to remember is that these are Russian claims. These are Russian claims that have appeared on Russian media outlets in Russia. They have not appeared on Western media outlets. They have not been independently verified. I looked at the Institute of War, and there is nothing at this moment confirming it. So we cannot state with any certainty that it is as Russia says. This is the message again that Moscow, the Kremlin, wants to give to the Russian public and also anybody abroad who will be broadcasting it. But we can't be sure what is happening without independent verification. What is certain from what we've seen over the past few years, there is a Russian offensive in that area and a Russian advance, and they do have strategic aims to choke off Ukrainian defense. But at the moment, we cannot base our reporting on what Russia is saying because they have propaganda interest in this war.
Indeed, and I wanted to also understand from you, if Russia continues to follow its strategy of pincer attacks as it's doing right now, does it then run the risk of its lines being too stretched, especially with winter around the corner?
That's a very good question. Pincer attacks is like a crab. When you grab an area, you strangle it, and it's a good strategy for attacking. But as you say, if you put a lot of your forces, a lot of your troops, if you invest a lot of your troops in these attacks, these advances, these offences, then you risk leaving other areas uncovered. And as winter approaches, and we're coming close to December, and it's pretty cold over there, it gets much harder. So Russia, I think, want to make a final effort, as they seem to have been doing in the previous weeks, to get as much offensive activity as they can before the snow falls, before it gets icy and conditions get a lot more difficult. But they do have a problem with manpower. They are relying for this huge war effort. They're relying on troops from North Korea. North Korea also working in their military factories. So they are very stretched. Russians don't generally want to fight in this war for obvious reasons. So it is difficult. And if they do put too many troops into one region or one attack, that does take away their military from other regions that they might need to, they want to attack or they need to defend.
Indeed. And we've also seen a statement by US Vice President J.D. Vance. He has emphasized that Donald Trump now recognizes the need to negotiate with Vladimir Putin despite their differences. We did see that Trump was eyeing talks in Budapest, which did not materialize. Of course, it happened after Kremlin sent a memo to Washington. But what do you make of Vance's statement, especially the timing of it?
I think it's an interesting development. What I know is that it was Donald Trump who cancelled the talks in Budapest, and I know that this caused a lot of problems in the Kremlin in Russia, because anytime Donald Trump appears with Vladimir Putin, it's good optics. It looks good for Vladimir Putin. It looks bad for Donald Trump, because the general impression is that Vladimir Putin runs circles around Donald Trump in terms of negotiation and of terms of persuading Donald Trump of his point of view. But we have seen this offensive in recent weeks, and I know that Trump definitely wants to settle this dispute. He wants to say that he is a peacemaker and he has managed to end this war. So it was clearly a postponement. But what is interesting is obviously J.D. Vance is being used here as a spokesman for Trump. He's putting forward the administration's position. What is interesting is he is acknowledging publicly there are differences. So we may expect the announcement of a new meeting, and we'll have to watch it play out, where it will be, what will happen, etc., etc. Because the one in Alaska was generally seen as a big victory for Vladimir Putin, a failure for Donald Trump, and nothing was achieved.
Indeed, ma'am. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates from Europe. We're now learning that Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, has reiterated his opposition to the European Union transferring 140 billion euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Fico has stated that the transfer of 140 billion euros to Ukraine would mean 2 more years of killings in the conflict. Fico has repeatedly emphasized that as long as he is Prime Minister, Slovakia will not participate in what he calls financing the continuation of the war. Slovakia has maintained that it insists on an immediate ceasefire and lasting peace in Ukraine. Stay with us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler. Slovakia is not the only country who we've seen trying to stall this bit. We've seen Hungary in the past as well. We also know that the Czech Republic and its Prime Minister Andrej Babis are also not really pro-Ukraine. But at the same time, the EU is having to deal with pressure from the Trump administration to really pull up their funding in this war. How do you think Brussels will sort of balance the two?
Well, I read Robert Fico's statement. I also read that he went to a school and they were pro-Ukrainian students there, protesters, and he actually said to them, why don't you go and fight in Ukraine? I also noticed his statement that he opposed the use of 140 billion euros of frozen assets and it would prolong the war. The first news agency to pick it up, I'm talking outside Slovakia, was TASS. So TASS is the Russian national news agency. So Robert Fico is doing the work, if you like, of the Kremlin. He is a spokesman, in a way, for Vladimir Putin, as is Viktor Orban and also the new Czech Prime Minister. These are Russia-friendly nations, and their aim is to disrupt any effort that Europe is making towards bolstering, helping Ukraine, and they are very useful to the Kremlin. I'm sure the European Union and NATO as well will find a way around their vote against. I mean, it is a democracy. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a unanimous decision, but we can expect, if we hear Robert Fico, Viktor Orban, the new Czech Prime Minister, we can expect opposition to any help, any military aid, any unfreezing of assets that Brussels intends to give Ukraine. These are nations that feel themselves more closely aligned to Vladimir Putin and Russia than they do to helping Ukraine in its war effort. As I've said before, Ukraine's war effort is, they call it not just a defense of their country, but a defense of Europe. But these three other nations, they feel more closely allied to Moscow than they do Brussels.
All right, ma'am, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time, of course, putting all of that into context for our viewers. On that note, we're shifting focus to some more developments coming in. We're now learning that US President Donald Trump has stated that he would like to hold a meeting between the United States, Russia and China to discuss reductions in nuclear arsenals. About the Air Force One, Trump has stated that he would like to denuclearize in a meeting primarily of the top 3 nuclear powers to cut back on nuclear weapons. Trump has added that the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country, with Russia being the second and China the distant third. These are his claims, of course. He's also added that both Russia and China will be at par with the US within 4 to 5 years. Listen in to what Trump has said.
That renovated them has built some, and I hated to do it, but I had no choice because they haven't. We have more. Russia's second, and China is a distant third. But within 4 or 5 years, they're going to be up with us. What I would like to do is I would like to go denuclearization. In other words, where we have a meeting primarily of the top 3 to cut back on nuclear weapons. That would be a great outcome.
With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow, international affairs expert, joining us from Brussels. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. Of course, Donald Trump there trying to once again make a bid for denuclearization, an interesting 180-degree U-turn from his earlier assertion that the United States will resume nuclear testing. He's also, in fact, stated that the United States is first as far as its nuclear arsenal is concerned, a claim that is disputed. Many consider that Russia is leading at the moment. But despite all of this, what do you make of Trump's rhetoric now, the abrupt change in his tone? What sort of spurred that?
Well, there's nothing particularly surprising that he changes his position by 180 degrees on any given major international issue from day to day or week to week. So this isn't an exceptional change. I think perhaps he got a better briefing from his military advisors as to what the real state of the situation is, where Russia has completely renovated its nuclear triad and is perhaps 10 years ahead of the United States in that regard. So they told him, boss, we are behind in the arms race. In fact, we lost the arms race. So maybe we should go back to the negotiating table. And that's what it's all about. The idea that he will bring together both the Chinese and the Russians at the same table is a complete non-starter, and he knows that. The Chinese have refused to be roped into any new limitation on nuclear weapons when they are so far behind the Russians and the United States by their own earlier decisions. They did not want to go nuclear. They only wanted to have a kind of riposte, a kind of deterrent to prevent nuclear attack on themselves. Well, the United States surrounding China, doing everything possible to prepare for a war with China, has changed the Chinese thinking. And now they're going for broke. They are going to match the same level of nuclear weapons as the United States and Russia. And there's nothing that Mr. Trump can do about that unless he backs off completely from the strategic assault on China that he is overseeing.
Indeed, you've mentioned that China has basically it's looking at increasing its arsenal in light of what the United States is doing in the Indo-Pacific, and its arsenal in the first place is in order to deter a nuclear strike on it first. We do know that China does have a formal no first use policy, but in spite of all of this, is Taiwan one of the primary considerations for the United States to come out with this aggressive rhetoric in the first place? And China, of course, not seeing eye to eye because of the one China policy.
Yes, there's a sharp contradiction here. And Mr. Trump is never completely consistent. I don't take his words at any face value. I look at his actions. And his actions so far have been to put up a vast fortune to finance a golden dome to protect the United States from Russian and any other missile attacks, an utterly hopeless task, which the Russians have brought home and made very explicit by demonstrating their latest strategic weapons, the Borovesnik in particular, which can penetrate any foreseeable future dome. So he has committed to spending vast fortunes of American taxpayers' money on absolutely hopeless and useless defenses. Now, I think he finally may have gotten the message that that effort is useless and perhaps should be stopped, and now he'd like to go to the negotiating table. The problem with all this is Mr. Trump has been the leading force in the world in the last dozen years against multi-party agreements. He is against any measure that restricts America's freedom of action. So his saying that he is for arms limitation is in sharp contradiction with his actions over the last decade.
Indeed, sir. And, you know, if China is successful in augmenting its nuclear arsenal, some even estimate that it's trying to basically double the current number of warheads that it has. How might then a future scenario like that impact the balance of power, especially in the nuclear arena?
It won't. Let's face it, the nuclear arms that each of these major powers has is not usable. If it were to be used, you have mutually assured destruction and the end of civilization on Earth as we know it. And all of the leaders of these powers understand that perfectly. The only strategic strength that any country can have today is conventional weapons. And in that realm, Russia is way out ahead of everybody else, including ahead of the Chinese.
Absolutely.
So when you take measures of military strength, the measures used in the past, and particularly the ones you mentioned now, are invalid.
All right, so with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time and, of course, sharing your analysis with all of us on NewsX World. On that note, viewers, we shifting focus to further developments coming in. According to Deputy Industry and Trade Minister